Hey everybody, this is Deji.
And Chris.
On today's episode, we talk with Avi Bagla about all things live producing and how to work your way up to that role. Let's get into it. For the people who don't know who you are, Avi, can you give us a little backstory?
Yeah, I was born 30 years ago. I really got to get used to that. No, I am a producer, just like you said. I love creating content that the way I've described it is bringing people to a moment. I work on a lot of live events. I work on a lot of event-oriented things, and I love the world of the internet. So everything I do tends to be online. I've done stuff on television, but honestly, I know that this is a production podcast, and all of you listening probably are like, I got into this with film. I also did, but I love seeing how the world can communicate back with you for the content we make. I produce live shows primarily. I have been doing that for the last 4 years. Before that, did a lot of work in late night and digital spaces, thinking the BuzzFeeds of the world. I worked on A Little Late with Lily Singh, the first season of that show, and have been making live shows recently, primarily for TikTok and Twitch.
So can you walk us through that first part of your career?
Yeah. How far back do you want to go? I was one of those kids in high school who used to, I like to say my film journey started with the fact that my mom won a copy of Sony Vegas in a random raffle at a conference she went to. So this $60 editing software that's very old school. I don't think anyone under the age of 28 would know what that is. That was my first exposure, got into Premiere, started editing when I was 12. But industry-wise, after I went to college, I did not study anything related to film because I thought I was going to go into the tech industry. I drank that Kool-Aid, but I had a really interesting degree program. It was really fun. And then I had a crisis of faith when I was 22, realizing that no, the only thing I really ever cared about was telling stories, making films, making things. So I do want to say up front, I got lucky in that right after I graduated, someone who had went to the same school I did. So I went to Stanford and studied symbolic systems, which has, again, nothing to do with film. Someone who was 2 years senior to me had been working as a production coordinator on America's Got Talent and The Late Late Show with James Corden, and got me my first PA gigs. I reached out to him. There was this group of alumni in the industry who were able to get me that first gig, which is always why I say network from the beginning. You never know
who's going to be the next studio executive. That's what we keep hearing.
Yeah, that's true. You don't. I'm understanding that now too, right? Especially I'm 8 years in at this point, and there's so many people who have gotten me where I am. But yeah, I worked for a couple months in that world of late night PAing, reality show PAing. And then I got my first full-time job working as intern and then promoted to associate producer at Mashable, and then went over to BuzzFeed. And that's kind of how I started everything out.
So when you were a PA, right, we're learning a lot of things. When did you feel like you're ready to move to the next level?
Never. I think the joke I've had with my fellow producers is you can't be a producer unless you have an anxiety disorder. I mean, I don't think that's 100% true, but I do think there's a level of there's never enough to learn. I still think if I were thrown as a PA on a set today, I would still be learning new things, right? Even if it's been years since I've done it. So as a result, I think when I thought about moving up, it was more believing in myself to learn the new things. When I went to Mashable, first as an intern, a lot of the work I was doing as an intern was very PA-like. It was going on runs. It was setting up shots. It was very digital, so there's a lot of hands across work. When I was at BuzzFeed, you had to do everything yourself with the assistance of one other person. And usually I was the other person. Sometimes I got to produce my own stuff, but you were two people crews for everything you did there. I was lucky that at Mashable, they promoted me to an associate producer because I saw how excited I was about making content, about how I wanted to produce a series, and they took that bet on me. I was also cheaper than your other producers. That's just something that does happen when you're really early in the industry. And I knew the online world really well. Like I grew up watching YouTube very heavily because there was no cable in my house.
So how long were you an associate producer before you became a producer and you started just taking on those roles?
That's where it gets a little bit more complicated. So let me go through the kind of career path that happened. I was an associate producer at Mashable. I then became a junior fellow, which is the like BuzzFeed training program at BuzzFeed. Freelance there for a while. Actually, it's not as complicated as I thought. I became a junior producer at a studio called Gunpowder and Sky. I was on their marketing team to make viral content and to market their movies, which I was really excited about because I wanted to be near filmmaking, right? Like I'd done all this digital stuff. It was great and I loved it, but I wanted to at least be as close to it as possible. And Gunpowder and Sky at the time, they might still have this, had an internal marketing studio. So they did a lot of their marketing for their own films, which a lot of studios farm out to other marketing agencies and companies. But Gunpowder and Sky wanted to keep it internal, wanted to work with the assets they had. And at this point, I had worked in online video for a long time, that it was a great transition. So again, that was me taking a bet on myself. I knew I was good at making content and making videos scrappily. And that was something this company wanted. It is one of only 2 jobs that I have gotten by applying cold. Everything else has been through networking, and it worked. And I was there for quite a while, for like a year and a half.
That was going to be my next question is when you were an associate producer and you're working in that, how did you sort of become a producer? How did you get those jobs?
Yeah, let's dig into the memories. I think,
Unlocking
Like
the
a
memory
leap
bank.
of faith. That's what it took.
I mean, that's a big part of it, honestly. Like you're right there, Chris. It's a leap of faith is a big part of it. I think I am someone who has a knack for enjoying the logistics piece of things. Like it is really fun to think about the creative aspects of a project, but it's also really fun to understand the building blocks that have to go there. That's how I started realizing like, okay, I want to produce things. I really love producing things. I love being creative. I love writing stories, but I am really good at this thing. It's a skill that people need, and I'm going to surround myself by people who do it. I also realize that a lot of people don't necessarily want to be producers. So there's this supply demand issue, right? Where people who are interested in the work and how many people are needed for it. And I realized that I just really liked it. So anytime I could, I would pitch things, get rejected a lot, especially in a marketing sense where you're just trying to throw as much stuff out there and take the risks you need to. I would get to produce some things, right? I produced some like social content that was designed to try to go viral. I hatched onto trends. I think one of my values is that I'm very fast. And that's like what helped me get a lot of gigs, right? I think that's a little bit of foreshadowing into how I ended up in live production. But being speedy, especially in today's day, is an extremely valuable asset.
Can you describe like what you mean by being fast?
I think one of the things that I would do is I understand that a lot of executives, and I'm going to say this as diplomatically as possible, don't know what they want until they see it. And so being someone who can edit fast and turn around that edit is really effective because you can show them something they can say no to. So you can get the feedback to get them where they can say yes. You can understand what they're envisioning that's not working for them. I love like having brainstorms where I'm pitching like 10 or 15 ideas in 30 minutes. And most of them are bad, but what they do is they inspire people to do new things. I think one thing that I learned is that if I got too precious about ideas, I would lose out. I would uh, not want to move past them and try something new. But speed is about trying something new. And I think that's also why I love filmmaking is our projects finish. You know, we are supposed to like wrap up, put them out there, and move on to the next thing. And the online content world's even faster than that. And that can be stressful. That's a double-edged sword in many ways. There are projects I put out there that I wish had done better. And there are projects that I am surprised at how well they do. But being fast is a key part of that.
This episode is brought to you by the FreeMe app. FreeMe is a crew time card job tracking app designed by film professionals for film professionals to help support the individual crew member. With FreeMe, you can easily see your work history, log your times, automatically calculate your gross wages, and much more.
Wait, but does it calculate overtime and meal penalties? Because sometimes I don't even know how to calculate that.
Yeah, it sure does. Both union and non-union. And when you're done with the job, you can export an invoice within seconds, all on your phone.
That's crazy. Because as a non-union independent contractor, I've always been curious, what if I wanted to charge for a union wage? What if I do become union? So that's really cool. So you're telling me that I don't have to log onto my computer after a 12-hour day and figure out my calculations for my time card?
Nope, you definitely don't. FreeMe does that all right there on the app.
How do I sign up, Deji?
You can get FreeMe now for 25% off the annual price with our code FreeMeLot1. Again, that is FreeMe, LOT, the number 1, to get 25% off your annual subscription. Offer valid for the App Store only. That's how you can get it, and hopefully all your problems will be solved.
I also think there's just a general excitement around being someone who is excited about a thing. I just realized that's a tautology. But being like having that energy also speeds you up, right?
Yeah.
Does that answer the question of being
Yeah, no,
speedy,
definitely.
being
I
fast?
think what I'm kind of getting is, you do have the experience of editing, which
Yes.
does help you to put things together quickly. And you have the excitement and you want to get things done and you want to get things out quickly. And so I think that the mindset versus and the skills sort of like make this process very streamlined for you. And I think that, when another person's excited, let's say the studio exec is excited about, what they want to do, and then you give them result really quickly, it like maintains that excitement, and then
Yes.
they get to, it's like a feedback, it's like a loop and a feedback loop. So the projects come out a lot faster because you're getting in while you're striking while the iron's hot, basically, is what
Yes.
I'm hearing from you.
And that's also especially the world I work in, right? That might not be true for a lot of filmmakers and a lot of production folks, but the world I'm in and the world that I've been excited by fits that.
You bring that up and I'm like thinking about like, oh my gosh, do I need to go faster on all of Lot1
Yes,
stuff?
the answer is
What's
yes,
happening?
Chris.
Yeah, the
Take
answer is
a good lesson from.
But
I'm here to support burnout. Is what I'm specifically here to burn out your entire audience. But no,
yes. Feel like you have any free time, feel bad now.
Yeah, feel bad now.
Something we've talked about with past guests is like creatives have the tendency to not want to let go of things and projects.
Yes,
I've interacted and encountered creatives who get stuck on that one script or that one idea, and it's like, oh yeah, I did like the spec commercial or the spec for it, not commercial, the spec for it, like 10 years ago, and I spent $60,000 on it, and I'm revisiting it now, and I want to re-crowdfund it, and like blah blah. And I was like, but why did it fail back then? Like, like why are we you spent family money on that? Oh no. And you want them to get the money back? Absolutely not. That's not going to happen. So we get stuck on it. And I feel like because of the era of which you grew up in and you were born, which is we're the same age, right? We grew up on YouTube content where we even were shocked, or like online content where it's like what would work and go viral and what wouldn't. And so like the era of Vine right in the middle of high school, you know what I mean? Like, and learning like, oh, all it takes is you to just be funny, and then like now we got TikTok, and then like even like machinima and YouTube and stuff like that. And like learning that like, oh, anyone can do this. It doesn't have to necessarily be crazy high production value that you spent years and years producing. It's kind of sometimes hard to get through as a filmmaker in a digital world that you live in now.
Yes. One thing, and this is maybe the piece of advice I want to give your audience. So if you take nothing else away, it's one of the things that, again, I think I mentioned this, I'm not precious about my ideas. And the thing you spoke to is there's a lot of creatives who want to revisit the projects that failed. Um, and yeah, sometimes that can work out. But I want you to have faith in yourself as a creative that you are going to continue to have good ideas. If you have to let go of some, if the person who said no to it, who is in power that can say yes to your ideas, says no, and it doesn't work in this moment, you are still creative and smart enough to come up with other ideas. You are not your 2 or 3 film ideas. Like I think that has been one of the best lessons I have learned, and I also struggle with it. I am not here being, I've never been precious about an idea before. I have projects that I'm like, no, this can work. I know it can work. Or projects that I want to be like, hey, this is an amazing short film idea that can turn into a feature, but it's just not there yet, right? Being precious can work in some cases, and we hear amazing stories about that, but you are creative enough to come up with more.
I was gonna emphasize, like, you can hold on to that because I have projects that I'm like, I refuse to bring out of that toolbox until I know that the money is there and the ability and the talent is there. And that's what I've been holding on to. And that's what I was gonna ask you. Do you have those things where you're like, if I had $1 million marketing budget, this is what I would do? And do you hold on to those types of things? Or are you like, nah, I got more. I got 20 in my back pocket.
I do, right? There are passion projects. There are creative ideas that, yes, I'm going to save for the time that I can build out. Some of them have been rendered out of date by culture, which has been a fun little, like, oh, this idea that was cool and innovative 7 years ago has been completely upended by the rise of ChatGPT. Great. I write a lot of sci-fi stuff, and it's fun to watch your sci-fi become science.
Dude, oh, dude, that's a podcast episode in itself. I literally have that thought all the time of like, how accurate are these movies becoming? Because I'm telling you, they're kind of not. Like, I was playing this a little bit more nerdy. I was playing Civilization 5.
Hell yeah.
Or yeah, Civ 6 actually with a friend, and like, you know, you go through the technology tree and stuff, and like you start getting AI and like all these things, and I was like, this is not at all what is happening in this current moment in life. Like,
Yeah.
like, you get AI and technology just is wonderful and everyone's progressing, and then it's like, here we're with ChatGPT, and it's like, it's taking our jobs. Creatives aren't going to be creative anymore. You know, like everything's going to be done by AI, and I'm just like, so I completely,
No,
it's interesting to see that.
Always capitalism at the end. But
yeah,
that's definitely true.
Hey, film industry folks, Deji here from the Lot1 Podcast. We've got big news. You can now be a VIP member of our film-loving family by joining our Patreon page. Get early access to episodes, exclusive behind-the-scenes content, and connect with fellow filmmakers. Your support means so much to us, and it helps us keep the reel rolling. Head on over to patreon.com/the Lot1 Podcast, and let's make movie magic together. Thanks for being a part of the Lot1 Podcast journey.
I do want to kind of get into working at TikTok and sort of how did you get that and doing the lives there?
Okay, so I'm going to take one step back in my career from there because, again, I am so blessed by the people who have taken chances on me. And I'm so encouraged by the people who have been connections. So here's the story we're going to tell. After I worked at Gunpowder and Sky, I'm going to give the value of like making good connections at each of your jobs. Gunpowder and Sky was the last time I worked a job where I cold applied to. That was 5 years ago. And in production, we're always working multiple jobs, right? We're not like any other world where you can spend 5 years at a company. That's so rare. I got my job on A Little Late with Lily Singh through a connection I made at Mashable. That was the head of studios over at Mashable when I worked there, who really loved working with me. She got me a job as a researcher on that team. So segment research is its own fun thing that we can get into later if you want. I think it's actually a great path into late night if you want to work in that space. After that first season wrapped up, I was looking for work. Another Mashable contact got me a job at this company called Jukin that works on viral videos and was trying to build its originals team. The pandemic hit. I was no longer part of that company. I was unemployed for 2 months, and then I got a job at this agency called Esports Engine. Esports was rising, it was blowing up. They were the agency of record for Twitch. They produced a lot of fantastic shows like Twitch Rivals and Twitch Gaming, talk shows all across. That job I got, the person who would become my manager was someone I met at Jukin. So I want you to follow this thread that I've created. This was live production. I had never done live before. He put his cards all on me, whatever that saying is. I probably have it completely wrong, but he took a bet on me and convinced his manager to take a chance on me because I had a research experience, right? That was something that they hadn't really had in that world, and I got thrown into the world of live. That is the first place that I have felt so out of depth at first. I did not know what I was doing. The speed at which it went, we talked about the speediness of viral content and editing there. You don't get to edit in live. Everything happens at that moment. If something's going wrong, and I will guarantee you in every live show you've ever watched, something has gone a little bit wrong, if not majorly wrong. You have to solve that problem in minutes, not days. You don't get an extra day on the edit. You don't get to just throw money at a problem. But I was thrown into that world. So that's how I got into live production. I think I did fantastic there. I'm still close friends with my manager who was my manager there. But that's how I got the experience to be a live producer at TikTok. A year later, a job opened up. My new manager would be someone I worked with at BuzzFeed. So I reached out to her. I went through the interview process, was lucky enough to do really well, but had all of this experience on how to produce live shows. I'd been producing gaming, which was something they were really interested in, right? It was a match of skills and interests that they really needed, and someone who understood the agency world, right? I was coming from a production company who built budgets, who was building shows from the ground up, going into what's called the brand side, client side, where I'm overseeing those production companies. So having someone who knows how they work is going to be really valuable. So that's how I ended up at TikTok, right? I think you're seeing those little dots and connections. The LinkedIn hustle is great. The hustle of trying to reach out to people and connect, because I'm in my freelance era now, right? I no longer work at TikTok. I want to be starting my own thing. At some point, I'm hoping to turn what I have into an agency or production company. I am relying on those connections, right? It's not the cold connections don't work. It's the people you've met with. I also say take every meeting. If someone reaches out to you because they want assistance, they want to pick your brain about something, once you do start to have more skill, take it, hustle for those meetings. But the best connections you will get are at the jobs that you have.
The fabric of filmmaking, I feel like, is connecting with other people.
Sure is.
Yeah. You are becoming best friends on set. That's the vibe of every production that I've ever had.
At least you hope.
Yes. Well, that's part of my job as a producer, right? Is to create that environment. I do think producers, one of the biggest things you're doing is determining the vibe on set, right? If you're intense and upset about things, everyone's going to be intense and upset about things. Not to toot my own horn, but I am considered, people see me as someone who's very chill on set, which I think is very funny, because I do feel like I'm constantly operating at
you're trust me, inside I'm not.
Inside I'm 8 things are up, but one of the biggest comments has always been oh, I love that you're on this project, you seem so chill. And I'm oh, okay, great. I am so glad to be a duck to you, calm on top of the surface, paddling really fast underneath.
Yeah.
That's so true, though. I've been on sets where, I can see when something happens because those producers just instantly, and then it's and then like mood's broken for the rest of the crew. Like
Exactly.
yeah.
This is sort of more of a general question more now, but what does a live producer do?
This is going to be disappointing to all the people who want to write all the time. I argue that every creative job is a spreadsheet job at the end of the day. You are doing so much of tracking, so much of putting things in spreadsheets. The job of a live producer is to make the live show happen. It depends on where I am in the ladder. When I was at TikTok, my job was, again, a lot of working with partners. So I was on the content operations team. I would work with the publishers, as we would call them, like Netflix or Vogue, or like musicians, and get them to go live on TikTok, explain to them what makes this platform different, how to do it well. I'd work with them creatively to make sure it matched there. But when I'm in the production world, right, which is, again, my favorite part of the process, it's part of the reason why I am starting this company and doing the productions that I'm doing, is because I miss being on the ground. It's putting together budgets. It's putting together crews. You end up working for like 6 or 8 weeks to ramp up to the final show. And a lot of the job of a live producer is creating as much of a scaffolding for the final show, so that if something breaks, if something changes, you have places to go. So it's building segments, right? A segment in the parlance of live or late night is something you can do for a set amount of time. So it could be interviews, which are the most boring segments in my opinion. It can be games. It can be some form. So like if you ever watch late night, if you ever watch the clips that late night shows put online, like Jimmy Fallon's like the karaoke thing. I'm blanking on the names now as I bring these up, but that's an example of a segment that you can put up there. You want to prep and work with the graphics team to make sure you have graphics for all the lower thirds, all the chyrons, all the transitions.
What's a chyron?
A chyron is the this is going to suck for people who are listening, but it's the lower bar. So if you've ever watched the news and you see that big bar that comes across the bottom,
that scrolls
information.
That scrolls. That's a chyron. So
got it.
Graphics that need to come up. So think for a sports show, right? You need something that can show where like for football, where the touchdown line is, where the play call is. You need to be able to, like, the job of a producer is to make sure all that stuff ends up where it needs to be. And it's similar to the job of a producer on so many other shows, where it's find the people who are better at you or better than you at this, put them in the spaces and trust them to do their job. And then one thing as a producer I would do a lot is call shows, which is being, you know how whenever you see an anchor like put their finger to their ear and be like, I'm getting this, that's a producer talking to them. That's a live producer giving them an update, telling them what's next. Hosts are fantastic in the live world, where they're hearing something in their ear, processing it while talking. Anybody who's in the live world is doing that in the master control room. I got very good at hearing like 3 different conversations while speaking. It was very fun. And also, I know for a lot of people that might be incredibly stressful. I love it. I am someone who hates spending too much time on a problem, and in live shows, you can't. You have to fix the problem really fast.
Yeah.
Hey, unlock exclusive interviews, explore diverse roles in the film industry, and join the cinematic journey on our Patreon at patreon.com/the Lot1 Podcast.
So I do have a question about the type of personality you feel like you need to sort of have in order to feel comfortable in a live setting.
That is a really good question. I think many personalities work, like, to be perfectly honest. But you have to be someone who can let things slide. Things are never going to be as perfect as you want them to be, which is honestly like kind of great. You can have a 100% goal. Great. You're not going to reach it. And if you do, fantastic. Some shows really hit that top. And for the audience, it'll look like a 100% thing. I want to be very clear that a lot of these things happen behind the scenes, and no one's the wiser except if you're a live producer and you're like, oh, someone messed up that graphic. I think you have to be someone who can roll with the punches. You also have to be someone who can prioritize fast. You don't get the time to decide which thing to do. Another piece of advice I always give like fellow producers is it's better to just make a decision than make the right decision. And I don't mean that like make a horrible decision, but sometimes you have 3 choices in front of you and you have 30 seconds to choose. You do not get to do a pros and cons. You do not get to decide the perfect thing. In retrospect, you might do a postmortem on the show and be like, okay, next time something like this happens, let's adjust, right? Because no live show is going to be your last live show. You're going to learn every single time, but you have to be willing to just make calls, and you want to be someone who can take charge. If you're a live producer, you are who people are looking to. I have been at shows where the entire feed has come crashing down. I'll tell you a story where my engineer wanted to keep the show up, but it looked awful. It looked like something was horrendously wrong, and we were sharing this feed with other people and no one else had this issue. And it was the first moment where my EP like saw me jump in and be like, okay, no, you do this, you do that, take down the feed. My engineer was like, are you sure you really want to do that? I was like, yeah, we can't see anything, take down the feed. So that's like making that call and being assertive about it, and then just going, okay, you're going to turn on the music, audio team. And this was all remote during COVID, by the way.
Oh, geez.
wow.
So you're just doing this over comms, like, all right, let's check in. I want an update every 2 minutes on what's going on. Let's get moderators in the chat answering things. And let's figure it out. Let's see if we can restart. What can we do without taking down the stream fully? That sort of energy needs to be a part of the work you're doing, right? It's being assertive, being able to take control, but also being chill, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I think people really do respect that. And be kind to yourself when you make mistakes, which is not a thing I do to myself, but recommendation
That's
I
hard.
have for everyone
that one's
else.
hard. That one's hard for me too.
Well, as a producer, whether it's live or not live, you're supposed to be the rock. You're supposed to know all the answers, even if you don't know the answers. So, yeah.
You have to be the answer.
Yeah,
right?
There it is. Well, if you had one piece of advice for anyone who wanted to make it in the world of live broadcasting or online marketing, everything you've done, what would that piece of advice be?
Man, this one's hard. Be scared, but be brave. I think I might sound like a confident, cool, collected guy, but I really pride myself on being cautious while also taking this step, right? A lot of people, especially in our position in the industry, forget what it was like to not know anything. I think that's one of the biggest things, and I try my best to continuously remember what it was like to not know the things I know like the back of my hand. And I remember how scared I was jumping into all of these things. I, again, at the beginning joked about every producer having an anxiety disorder. Look, I have one. I got the meds for it. I can prove that if people need me to. But fear is healthy, in my opinion. I think one thing we always have to remind ourselves is that like anxiety wouldn't exist for us if it weren't useful in some cases. But taking that next step is always worth it. Yeah. So be scared, but be brave.
Yeah, that's great. I love that.
Wait, before we go, though, how do people find you if they have more questions, Deji?
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I'm
you know what?
Sometimes happy to disappear into the ether. I like this idea that I'm just a voice that appears. Look,
and then you just appear in a different episode too. You just come in, and then come out.
Yeah, I'm meant to be a voice. No, so you can find me. I'm at Avi Bagla, AVIBAGLA on every social media platform. Mastodon, I'm at Avi Bagla at xoxo.zone. I don't know if anyone's thrown a Mastodon in here, but
no. You're the first.
Hey, we gotta think about the future, you know. But everywhere else, Instagram at Avi Bagla, TikTok, follow me there. I make weird. Sorry, wow, I was so good this whole show. I make weird stuff. I also have a website, www.avibagla.com. I'm working on launching my production company, humidity.studio. If you want to go check out a one page that says coming soon.
Perfect.
Hopefully soon it'll say things. So
Yeah.
Outside of production, I make a lot of weird tech projects. If you go to my website, you can see a net elevation simulator where you can determine the net elevation of dead celebrities. Go check it out.
What?
We can talk about that in the after party. We can
let's talk about that in the after show. Because I don't even know what was just said. Okay. Well, join us on the after show where we discuss all the strange projects that Avi is working on. But no, seriously, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yes.
It was super fun. And see you very soon.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's a wrap for today's Lot1 Podcast episode. Huge thanks to our sponsor, FreeMe. Remember to use the discount code FreeMeLot1 for 25% off the annual subscription. Again, discount code is FreeMeLot1 at checkout for your exclusive deal. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed that episode, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcast, and leave a review and share it with your brand new puppy. It really helps others find us. Big shout out to our producer, Mina Vazirian, and our editor, Carlos Luna. They're the real stars. If you're not a part of our exclusive Patreon community yet, head on over to patreon.com/the Lot1 Podcast right this second for early access, bonus content, like the after show, and much more. Also, I want to give a quick shout out to our incredible Patreon supporters because your backing keeps the Lot1 Podcast lights on. Connect with us on Instagram and TikTok at the Lot1 Podcast. That is the LOT1 Podcast for behind the scenes content and updates. We're now accepting listener mail. So if you got any questions that are burning for our guests or us, just drop us a line. Also, if you're interested in finding out more about Lot1 Productions and all we got going on over there, check us out at Lot1Productions.com. And I'm going to guess you know how to spell it by now. Until next time, keep those creative fires burning, dream big, and remember the filmmaking journey is a ride worth taking. See you next time.